Now, let us now start with our first discussion. I'd, I'd like to request Dr. Ravi Gaur to join us for a group picture. I'd request Dr. Ravi Gaur and Dr. Shah to please take a seat so we could begin our next session. Now, let us now begin with our first discussion. The topic for today is Leadership in Diagnostics, Shaping the Future and Navigating the Changing Landscape. I'm excited to call out the speakers for the panel on stage. We have Dr. Ravi Gaur, Chairman, Medical Advisory Committee, Unipath Specialty Laboratory, Founder and Director, DRG Path Labs. Dr. Sushil Shah, Chairman and Executive Director, Metropolis Healthcare. Dr. Avinash Phadke, President and Mentor, Agilus Diagnostics. Sir, I request you to join us on stage. Dr. Rajiv Gautam, Corporate Officer, Horiba Limited, President, Horiba, India. Sir, I request you to join us on stage. Ms. Khushbu Sharma, Joint Director, Voice of Healthcare. Ma'am, I request you to join us on stage. Please give a huge round of applause to our panelists. Now, I'd like to welcome Ms. Khushbu to lead this discussion as the session moderator. Over to you, Khushbu.
Thank you, Tarini. Once again, on behalf of the organizing team at VOH, I would like to take this opportunity to welcome each and every one of you to the second edition of our flagship event, which is the National Diagnostics Forum 2024, which is also followed by Diagnostics Innovation and Excellence Awards. Now today, of course, it's a very special day for all of us at the organizing team and the Scientific Advisory Committee team. Not just because we are commencing the second edition today, not just because we have an amazing and enthusiastic audience with us as our delegates, and we have received an inspirational participation and inspirational, commendable, enthusiastic participation from the nominees itself. But also the fact that the dignitaries that I have on the stage today have continued their support and participation consecutively second time in a row and have participated with us as our speakers at this forum itself. So thank you so much to all four of you, sir, for your participation once again and your support that continues. The discussion today would not, so we'd be focusing on leadership, their leadership skills, their lifelong lessons, and how do they envision while they transform the diagnostics industry, and how do they envision the future of it. The outlook of today's discussion would be setting a tone in a way that we learn from their experiences, because we do have an entire agenda in front of us where we talk about technical expertise, where we talk about infectious, etc. But this next 50 minutes, we wanted to dedicate and listen to their lifelong experiences. So that's the way we'd be following the discussion. I would like to start with Dr. Avinash Phadke, sir. Sir, I took the leverage and referred to some of your public interactions where you nonetheless often and emphasize on the potential of pathology and how is it impacting and has a significant importance in human health and well-being. So how do you see the role of pathology evolving throughout the years at the broader content of healthcare, specifically keeping in mind the advancements in personalized medicine and precision diagnostics? Over to you, sir.
Thank you, Khushbu, and I am very happy to participate in the second event organized by Voice of Healthcare, and it's a pleasure to interact with fellow delegates and all of you. And Dr. Sushil Shah has already explained how the lab journey has evolved in his lifetime, and I agree with him mostly. And there are few points I would like to make. Today, in terms of decision making, when we say decision making, I am talking about medical decision making. Often you will hear a grievance that today's clinicians lack clinical acumen and ask for too many tests. Now, is it true? Can you diagnose a high fasting blood sugar by examining a patient? Can you diagnose a high prostate-specific antigen by looking at the patient or a digital rectal examination? You can't, because when the prostate cancer is small, forget digital rectal examination, your ultrasound will fail to detect it. And only way is to do either contrast MRI with contrast or PSMA PET scan. So these modalities have uncovered a field where the medical diagnosis today is 70% dependent on pathology tests. So a simple thing like pyrexia of unknown origin. Now you are able to diagnose on day one with PCR-based assays whether your pyrexia is related to, say, dengue, chikungunya, scrub typhus, or it is typhoid or malaria, anything. All these tests were earlier done manually, but they are also done by PCR in today's time. So I would say, first of all, it's a myth that a clinical acumen, that's not to belittle clinical acumen or lack of history taking. What I am trying to tell you is, if there is hepatitis, you can't say whether it's hepatitis A, B, or C, or E without recourse to pathology tests. So pathology tests are playing an extremely important role in 70 to 75% of the cases of medical diagnosis. The remaining 25% get covered mostly either they are self-evident or imaging plays a role. The second thing we must remember that the pathology is moving closer to patient's bedside. So the demand of turnaround time, when the industry started, when the corporatization started in this industry in late 90s or actually early 2000, it was every CEO's dream to create a hub and spoke model where they would have a central reference lab and thousands of samples will drain from all over India, right from liver function tests to thyroid assays to fertility assays to the mother lab, achieving the efficiencies of scale. And everybody thought that's the way to go, because it results in savings, your reagent costs are low, your trained manpower is less, and that's the way to go. But then we realized that patients want same-day reports. Nobody is wanting to wait for thyroid report for 2 days now. Nobody wants to wait for tumor markers for 2 days. So whether it's your CA, PSA, or alpha-fetoprotein, the report has to be released on the same day. Then this demand for turnaround time destroyed the model of hub and spoke and decentralized it. So the earlier, a single lab, mother lab model is getting replaced by multiple smaller reference labs or multiple labs. Sometimes in the city, they will have 6 to 7 labs now to cater to this turnaround time. But it's not enough. You look at what has happened in emergency medicine. Today, if you go with a chest pain to a hospital, it's at the casualty or ICU that the point of care testing decides whether your troponin is high or your NT-proBNP is high and guides you to either for emergency angioplasty services or cardiac acute coronary event kind of services, or if your NT-proBNP is raised, it's a case of cardiac failure and the patient is treated accordingly. Similarly, point of care testing in US now are accounting for almost 20-25% of tests. So right from fertility to glyco-HB, all parameters are done by a patient themselves. At the moment in India, it's only glucose. Most of the patients do glucose monitoring. Now you have Abbott system of continuous glucose monitoring. So patients don't come to lab, they come to lab instead of coming every month. They come once in a 6 months just to see that their glucose readings at home tally with the lab reading. So in other words, not only the hub and spoke is because of turnaround time demands and proximity of test results to actual patient bedside and advent of point of care testing had changed things in a big way. So to answer your question, these would be the major changes that the pathology plays role in majority of 70% of the clinical diagnosis. Turnaround time takes it away from hub and spoke model, and we are moving closer to patient bedside, and this would mean you will have a pocket size, your telephone like point of care instrument for molecular testing now. So your many molecular tests like your COVID test or dengue test could be done by point of care devices which are closer to the patient bedside. And I think that trend will likely to persist. And as Dr. Ravi has said, the genomics and personalized medicine is here to stay. I will just give you one last example before I end about what I mean by personalized medicine. If you look at, say, let's say, simple thing like prostate cancer metastasis, we used to do bone scans, then we used to do PET scans, and now we have a monoclonal antibody, which is a PSA antibody which is tagged to radioactive substance. So it is all replaced by PSMA PET scan. So now no oncosurgeon will ask for a bone scan. He will straightway ask for a PSMA PET scan where you know the size of lesion as well as the metastatic disease. This is achieved by tagging an antibody to your radioactive marker. So this is movement towards personalized care. And just like immunotherapy has happened in many cancers, we are going to move towards personalized care, whether it is organ transplant or so many other fields. That is another thought process and path which will emerge, that the care will not be universal, applicable to all, but it will be more personalized.
Absolutely, sir. Thank you for that. And I'm sure that the panel also would be quantitatively be agreeing on the significance of pathology in the greater well-being of the human health. Following to that as well, sir, Dr. Phadke, following to the significance of pathology bringing in to the excellence in diagnostics industry, you've also envisioned doctor-led diagnostic centers, which again is very evident by the establishments of Agilus Dr. Phadke labs as well. And I'm sure we have a lot many in the audience who would agree the significance of the doctor-led diagnostic centers. So how do you envision that the contribution to the delivery of qualitative medical guidance and counseling, and what impact has it had on the trust and reputation of your labs? Over to you, sir.
Yeah, I will answer your question in two phases. One, are you able to run labs without pathologists? Again, every CEO's dream that, we'll have a digital signature and we will run labs across the country by auto verification. It's possible. But luckily for us, the Supreme Court decision says that you require an MD pathologist to sign out a pathology report. So it's not gloom and doom for pathologists. They will continue to exist for times to come because it's a medical legal and compliance requirement, not only by the court, but even by NABL. You required a qualified MD pathologist to sign certain reports, and sometimes a PhD report has to be co-signed by a MD pathologist. So in that sense, without them, you can't run the labs. Secondly, you remember, we talk about digital pathology. Commonest application of digital pathology is in genetics, I would say cytogenetics, and histopathology, where you can digitally transmit the images and have an opinion. But the question is, who does the grossing of that sample? Now, suppose I have received a radical mastectomy specimen, and I have taken sections, and I have failed to detect the primary, which is just 0.3 centimeter. I have submitted sections from rest of the breast, transmitted the images to distant digital expert, who signs out your report saying your mastectomy, there is no residual tumor, where actually there is a residual tumor. So this, in other words, even to do that grossing, you require a trained MD pathologist to do that grossing, because no senior medical oncologist would accept a report by a trained histopathologist where the grossing is done by an unqualified person, because it equally plays important role. Suppose there is a CA colon, whether your margins were involved, if there is prostate radical robotic prostatectomy, whether the seminal vesicles were involved, whether there was lymph node spread. Now, that doesn't take away the importance of digital imaging, because you have access for a second opinion, you have access for digital transmission. But if you had idea that this would result in tremendous cost cutting, that is not going to happen, because even to do your grossing, you require qualified MD pathologist who is well versed with histopathology. It's not easy to dissect a radical neck dissection, and in India we are head and neck cancers are 28% of all cancers. The sad part is every fifth Indian will have cancer. That's the sad part. The sad part is that the cardiovascular diseases are now becoming equal to oncology. So you will see medical oncology is a new field which is coming up in big way with commercial PE investments in that field. The cyber knives are coming in a big way. The onco teams are creating centers of excellence in a big way. So these are all changes which require skilled manpower. So to answer your question, pathologists will always have a role to play. Of course, he can supervise larger number of tests. The need of number of pathologists can be cut down because of automation, middleware, because of auto verification. But whether we will become extinct species, not in next decade or so at least.
Thank you, sir, for that. Right, so moving on, Dr. Rajiv Gautam. So for you, we all know and we've read that Horiba India has now spread its presence towards the SAARC nations as well. Building manufacturing facilities beyond the borders and going to varied locations, how do you navigate the challenges and opportunities associated with it while growing the medical segments out there? And also, what considerations are taken into account when establishing manufacturing facilities and expanding the reach of diagnostic sections in different geographies? Over to you.
Thanks, Kushbu. Before I answer your question, this is my privilege to be part of this panel. My gurus are here. I can see Dr. Mr. Vajrani there. Namaskar, sir. So that's my privilege to be part of this panel first. Coming to your question, honestly speaking, neighboring countries, when it's Sri Lanka, Pakistan, you leave it, leave aside, Sri Lanka, Bangladesh, Maldives, Bhutan. Honestly, this is now greater India. Hardly any difference. You be in the Colombo, you feel like you are in Chennai. So people, language, everything, labs, patients, everything is same. So it is no more any neighboring countries. It is part of like a greater India. And all the diagnostics company, IVD companies, they also cover this sphere. Suppose you are in Europe or US and everything, they don't consider India as India, they consider all this as a greater India. And everybody has presence there. The one thing you asked me about how to run it, it's very important to run it through our own people. Not normally people think to distributors and everything. So as we also Hariba run it, all this thing, we have our own team there, everything is there, our experts is there, our media, marketing is there, everything is we are doing by ourselves. That's to have to consider. Of course, foreign currency and everything, Sri Lanka was down for all these things. You have complications, you have to understand, but you have to have your own presence. That's important. And treat them as your own. It's not like a different country. So when we make a policy at Ariba and Delhi, we make it for everybody, not for just for India. So everything is almost similar. And it's growing. Bangladesh is really growing, I think. Sometimes we feel their GDP is better than India. So it's really, Bangladesh is really growing from this perspective. But other countries are also catching up. For IVD company, there is a very good market for us with good margins. Thank you.
Right, sir. And while we were focusing on, I'll just follow up the
Yeah.
question, sir. While we are building on how we are building the manufacturing facilities, not just in India, but outside India, a very important part of setting up facilities is also to make sure that we are right ahead of the curve when it comes to technological advancements.
We don't have any manufacturing outside India. We have our
Okay.
manufacturing in India. We have just 2 years back, we started our Nagpur facility, big facility. I think it's one of the biggest facility for hematology in this country. So we cater it for all these regions, for the South Asian regions from India. That's how I will talk about the greater India. So it's not only
Okay.
facilities for India, but it's for the greater situations and everything. And we need a manufacturing, make in India, and all that things is happening. So many things is happening. Customization, it's packs, India is packs and everything. And it's not only manufacturing, not only for reagent consumables, it's the instruments. Ultimately now, tenders and everything, we have to have a make in India situation. So it's not a luxury, or I think it's a mandatory for things that we make in India to make it a business in India. And that's the need, and we have a very good facility there, and we are manufacturing instruments, reagent, consumables, so many things. We are creating outside Japan and France, as a Hariba, we are creating a third R&D center in India now.
Right. All right. Thank you. Thank you for that, sir. Moving on to Dr. Ravi Gaur. Sir. So you've successfully established numerous independent and hospital labs. What key factors do you consider when setting up diagnostic chains, wellness centers, and allied healthcare businesses? Over to you, sir.
Morning, everyone, once again. I think, thank you so much for keeping me here. And I think, again, I respect my privilege to be here with the two most icons of the industry. And, of course, the upcoming person right here. When Dr. Fadke just mentioned something, he said, near patient. That's exactly one of the important factors happening in the industry. Earlier used to be a primary lab, a secondary lab, and a tertiary lab. Primary was okay, morning, evening reports. Secondary is, okay, I want to have report like the thyroids and torch, probably next day or third day can work. And tertiary is a high quality, like histopathology. But I think today that is changed. A lot of things from the secondary is moved into primary. A lot of things from tertiary is moved into secondary. And primary is moved into, say, point of care or even near care, near patient care. And that's a change which is happening. Now we have molecular lab, you see in COVID labs, actually happening at the district level or even probably tier 2 and tier 3 cities. And this is a change, this is because of technology. So that's something which is happening today. Keeping this in mind, when you set up a lab, probably we have, I think, probably across India, we set up multiple labs. And seeing the various models, Dr. Sushil Shah mentioned about the satellite lab, a chain of labs now coming up, and that's actually reality. First important part is I think you need to see the market research. Like what is there, what is not there. You may probably a city may be having a 10 molecular lab, you're sitting in a molecular lab, will it work? That's one part. So you need to have a good market research understanding, what is the need of the place. Now, how far? Probably say, it's about, say, 20 kilometers outside of Delhi. It may not work what is written in Delhi. You have to see the distance, the market requirement. Secondly is the quality. I think I still always maintain, because that's what I've learned actually from Dr. Fadke right here. I remember working with him, and he used to say, if you want a satellite lab, what will happen to the quality of reporting? And the quality is taken an upward stage. I think by automation, that's helping a lot. But I think quality, can you provide the quality? I think that's the second important part. Thirdly, the technology and integration. Can the technology, what you have, today it's automated. So can we have the instrument technology service available in that particular place? What technologies may not be available, like Horiba is now across India, but a couple of technologies in one part of the country, another part of the country. Can the technology be there? How can you serve? Can it be served? Can it be integrated into the systems? Then comes the important part of the skilled workforce. Automation has taken care of a lot of things, but again, there's a lot of change in the skill. Is the skill force available there? I don't know. If it is not there, what will you do? You need to train, take time, and develop the skill. Then important is the regulatory compliances. With now a lot of state, because multiple states have got multiple regulations. Clinical Establishment Act is into place. So you have to see, will you be how much compliant, how much regulatory, keep that in mind. That's the important part. There is, of course, the collaboration, because without collaboration, nothing is going to work. You have to collaborate with a lot of institutions, hospitals, probably the home care providers, and on the upside also, the bigger tertiary hospital, secondary hospital, that collaboration or research, clinical trial. Do they have a facilities, or will you, if you set up a lab in a place which is don't have much of a workload, but I can collaborate with the industry for clinical trial, probably it will help me out. So keeping that also in mind. Then of course, ultimately comes the patient-centric approach. Because if I have a walk-in and probably my brand, my name is available in a small town or a small place where a lot of people are coming to me, but I am not there. Those are walk-in, can I? Because it'll be, otherwise they're coming one referral, second referral, third referral. So that means if I have a place, people recognize my efforts, basically, why not put up a lab out there to have a more patient-centric kind of a thing? These are the important parameters we normally look into it when you set up the lab. And ultimately, I think it's all together. You have to make, and you have a last important part of resources, how much to spend, where to spend. If you put together, then only become a successful center and integrate with the local ecosystem. That's going to work.
Right, sir, right. And following to that, anyways, Dr. Phadke sir has quite envisioned about how pathology and pathologists are the core center of setting up a diagnostic center. So you being an oncopathologist yourself, how do you envision the role of pathology, specifically in the era of precision medicine? What challenges and opportunities do you see for pathologists in aligning with the principles of precision medicine?
Well, I think I'll straight away say, without pathologists, nothing going to work. That goes without saying. Because they are the founder, they are the foundation. It is whatever you can, probably we have automation, we have artificial intelligence, we have whatever. Ultimately, who's the one who's looking after, integrating and putting them, weaving them together? It's pathologists' understanding. A pathologist understand, the role of pathologists might change because automation has happened. Your role is probably not much into the machine kind of a thing, because earlier, I'm so sure, must be seen. I think I've seen in my army days, I was in the Indian Army, that time we used to make own controls. We used to do pipetting by ourselves. We used to learn on those aspects. Those things are gone. Probably we have all ready-made things available today. But the role of pathologists is changing. The pathologists are important to probably also, communicate and understand and interpret. Because it's no more like one report or one value, no. It's an era of personalization, the communication. That will remain forever. Pathologists cannot change. That is something which is right. Now, when it comes to precision medicine, again, I say because you have a pathologist who's well equipped with the science. They know what's abnormal in the body. They know what physicians really, their language. You can come out with a cholesterol report of value so and so, or maybe a urea report of value, creatine value or so and so, but a protein value. But can you correlate them together? I think that's one of the pathologists report with advancement. Because clinicians, there are many advancement happening into medicine and diagnostics. I remember, like what Sushil Shah also said, that like we used to have 200 tests at point of time. Today we have 5,000 tests. So if my clinician friend don't know about it, I also don't know about it. So I think we need to be updating ourselves and making sure that whatever the tests are there, we have a new test like infectious disease, we have infection, which is talking about how do you integrate that test, communicate to the clinician. The communication is very, very important. Though a pathologist also become like a clinical solution provider. Talk, interpret, and make sure the right test is prescribed for the better diagnosis, the faster. And when it comes to digital pathology, I think digital pathology you asked, I think this has come, its era has come. In fact, I had the privilege to see one of the first digital adaptation in Shah's lab itself, way back. They were working on a renal pathology kind of a system. But I think that's, again, I think it's not, a digital pathology, it's again supported by a pathologist. You need to create, it's an augmented tool, augmented intelligence for my pathologist, screening basic level. Maybe you have a report format out there. If you missed out certain things, they will come on the alert. And a second opinion, a third opinion. But the primary pathologist is going to always be there. So this is there is a reluctance. There is a resistance to change because we all have been trained on seeing by the microscope. But I think gradually it is coming to place. And sooner or later, I'm sure when the medical colleges and teaching would happen on digital pathology, many people start adopting it. It's got a good tool for teaching in any case. It can always help. It can help out later on developing AI on it. But I would have a word of advice for diagnostic people. Today we have incubators sitting in IITs, Technology Institute. They are working under, like on our images. I think it's very important for pathologists to say, you have the full knowledge. Integrate, collaborate with these people. If you collaborate with the, the institution, the technology people who are expert, I think you can have a better outcome. Because otherwise they will work in whatever data is provided. You have the knowledge. So it's digital pathology is going to be here, it's not going to go away, but we need to adopt it. And faster we do, better it is. That's what it is.
Right, sir. If there's one common thing with all the interactions with you all, so that there's no way without the pathologist, that everything is clear, and the digital pathology and precision medicine is accepted already, and it's the way forward for all the industries out there. With that, I would come to the concluding question, a common question to all my panelists. I would like to start with Dr. Sushil Shah here. Sir, I would like to request to seek your remarks on looking ahead. What do you see as the most significant trends and opportunities in the sector? Also, a key takeaway message to some of the delegates in front of us who might be looking to venture out in the diagnostics industry, and how can the upcoming leaders prepare for and capitalize on these changes? Are there any emerging technologies or practices that you believe will play a pivotal role in shaping the future for diagnostics? Over to you, sir.
Yes. See, ultimately, everybody's worth is judged by his competence in certain things. In what actually you got a competence. Now, pathology is such a vast field that you cannot be competent at everything. You cannot be good at histopathology and this and this and this. So I think for a new people who are coming in, the very important thing is you have to specialize and become good at one particular aspect, so good that the laboratory needs you for that all the time. The rest of the things follow, because today also everybody has got a strong point. Somebody's strong point is hematology, somebody may be surgical pathology, somebody may be biochemistry, somebody may be molecular biology, anything. But nobody can be good at everything. It's not possible. So I think I would suggest if anybody new who's want to make a mark in a lab, I think it's very important you have to be very good and specialize in one particular thing, particularly for which the laboratory is going to depend upon you. I think that is the way you make yourself absolutely necessary to the lab. Second thing, this pathologist's role today is very different in the lab. I mean, you just doing your test alone is not enough. You just supervising biochemistry reports is not enough. You have to be also a very good administrator, because ultimately the whole lab works with multiple people who are working under you. So unless and until you are a good administrator, I know of so many people who are very good pathologists, but they were bad administrators. With the result, they couldn't make a mark. So I think it's very important that you have to be a good administrator, and for that either it may be a great idea to do a diploma in admin. There are also now for medical administration, there are courses. Just do one of those courses, which will help a lot. But the point is that you have to provide what institution requires. What is the need you have to provide for that? If you can't, then there is a problem. And then you are not going to see eye to eye with them. As I told you, the single run laboratory, I think the era is getting over. So I think nobody today in the right mind will go and start his own lab, a single lab, and hope for the best. It's not going to work. So ultimately it's going to be either you have to be there in the hospital, or you have to be there in one of the chain of laboratories, or you can be there in probably research. These are the openings which a pathologist will have in future. Second thing, I think one of the way in which, coming to what Dr. Phadke said, coming to that point, one of the way in which you can ensure that pathologist is able to play a significant role in the lab, even if he doesn't own it. Suppose it's owned by somebody, and if you are going to be in the lab, one of the way to do it is like they have got a rule in South Africa. What they have the rule there is the laboratory starting license is given only to a pathologist, not to the person who is putting in the money. So with the result, he becomes a fulcrum point in the laboratory for all the time to come, because the license of the laboratory is his name. It cannot be given to anybody who just puts money. So pathologist continues to play, and he can probably prevent any unnecessary wrongdoings which may otherwise go in, because some businessman is putting the money and may not run it right, and you don't agree eye to eye. But then you have got a say. Otherwise, if you are just running as a pathologist in a laboratory, what is your say? You just come, you do your test and go away. And if you don't like it, they say bye-bye, then you get somebody else. You have no role whatsoever to play. So I think this is one thing which is very important. And I feel the second thing is, it is not that pathologist is supposed to sit and do each and everything in the lab. Which is the normal. For everything, they'll catch the pero. Tomorrow there is something missing in the number of tests done, more than what it's required to be done, they'll catch them. They can't do it. And for this, I think it's very important that one has to bifurcate the work in that. Like say, Quest, for example, in US, which is the largest lab in the world. In their clinical laboratory, there is not a single MD doctor. No MD doctor. And clinical laboratory, when I say it takes hematology, it takes clinical pathology, it takes molecular biology, it takes genetics, everything. And there is not a single MD doctor there. Each department is headed by a PhD. So I think, and this is right, I feel, and the doctors are there only for histopathology. They do only for histopathology. And to make sure that doctors have their worth and their payments is worthwhile, instead of they getting into this mundane thing of running the department, their salaries are very, very high when they work in surgical pathology. I would say, simple example, they earn something like $200 to $300 per sample. So each slide they see, they earn that much. So obviously they have to charge also more. So this is how they have brought up the histopathology at a different pedestal, which actually is a forte for the doctor. Otherwise, running a biochemistry department, anybody can do. You don't require to be MD pathologist to run that. Occasionally there may be an issue, like he says, where help may be required. But otherwise, what day-to-day basis you don't require. So I feel that there is a niche which has to be created for the pathologist. One thing in the running of the that institution, whichever it is, the hospital otherwise. And the second thing is where what is supposed to be his forte and what he's supposed to do there. It's extremely important. And I think if you follow this, you'll find that even more and more doctors, more pathologists, more people would like to go into pathology and do, because they learn better, they'll have the limelight, and they'll be also having a better positioning.
Right, sir. Thank you. Dr. Phadke, sir, I would like to request your remarks, please. The closing remarks.
So just to conclude, like Dr. Shah has already told you, the pathologist needs to specialize in some domain specialty. Unfortunately, in India, you have a MD degree which is common to everything. So you are only biochemistry is separate, but otherwise if you are clinical pathologist or histopathologist, it is post-MD you qualify by training. Abroad, or most of the countries, your histopathology is a separate MD, clinical pathology is separate, molecular is separate, the fields are separated much earlier. And like he rightly mentioned, you cannot be master of all, so you should choose your niche area. One of the other things the pathologist is expected to do in today's times, two things I would like to add to what is already discussed. One is his role in accreditation. Now the lab head is also supposed to maintain accreditation on the behalf of chain or hospital. It's a part of his job. So he should be thoroughly aware of the manual, whether it is NABL guideline or CAP guideline, the proficiency testing, and what are the requirements, the CMEs to be conducted. All these aspects the pathologist should be aware of, because now every lab would have some kind of accreditation. If you are in a hospital lab, the hospital may go in for NABH or JCI, and the lab head is supposed to know that. So one, acquaintance and mastery over all accreditation processes is a need of the hour for pathologists. The second thing, we talked about 5,000 tests. Many times we have seen, even today, the clinician is not even aware, because it's impossible. Like I am not aware of what is available to me in imaging, for example. I don't know what different modalities of imaging are available. If you go for radiotherapy, you don't know whether there is a true beam or stereotactic or brachytherapy or a cyber knife kind of a thing or a gamma knife. Each has its pluses and minuses. Similarly, many a times the urologist or a gynecologist will ask the pathologist that this is the case. So whether, suppose somebody's semen count is normal, and he is not conceiving. So it's a case of unexplained infertility. So the pathologist then can say, yes, I would like to do a DNA fragmentation on this sperm. I would like to do mitochondrial membrane potential. Similarly, there is a history of familial history of premature cardiovascular disease. You see many families where lipid profiles are normal, but the families have strong history of heart attacks at a young age. And most of these cases are just lipoprotein A elevations. And these lipoprotein A is strong genetic history. Your statins don't bring them down. There is no drug to bring them down. At the moment, there is a drug called Rapetha, which is a monoclonal antibody for cholesterol lowering. It's available in India, which brings down your lipoprotein A, but it's not FDA approved to do that. It's FDA approved only to bring down your LDL cholesterol. Now, the cardiologist in this case of a strong family history with an apparently normal lipid profile is expected to talk to pathologists that what other options are available, whether you have a role in the form of ApoB to ApoA1 ratio. Now we consider ApoB as a more atherogenic molecule than LDL cholesterol because it's combination of all bad guys. It's a combination of your LDL cholesterol, lipoprotein A, VLDL cholesterol and intermediate density cholesterol. So world over you will see the shift is occurring from targeting LDL as below certain level to targeting ApoB. Now this information needs to be communicated to patient, clinician in various medical forums by talks, speeches, and that is also a role of pathologist. So apart from what is being discussed, to end, maintenance and achieving accreditations, aware of quality compliances in the country, that includes even waste disposal norms. You know that if there is a lapse on waste disposal, the company's director can go to prison up to 5 years. That's the Indian law. So the board of directors take waste disposals very seriously because the consequences are very damaging. So the pathologist needs to be aware. His duty doesn't end by running a lab. If there are infectious samples, how to discard it. So maintenance of accreditation, awareness of new tests, and the test menu of 5,000 needs to be explained to relevant clinician. You will explain different test menu to a neurophysician and a different test menu to gynecologist, and you need to cover medical aspects of variety of these tests. And of course, lastly, you need to be master at some field. It could be immunology, it could be molecular, or it could be histopathology. I think that's the way ahead for the pathologist as well as the lab chain. I will just end by saying what Dr. Sushil mentioned, what happened in 90s, and so many labs are not existing today, especially the multinational. It has been experienced, if you look at the experience, unlike pharma companies, at least in lab business, the Indian promoters probably do a better job than multinationals. For a Quest or LabCorp, it is difficult to run businesses in India. Secondly, some of the practices in India, they cannot indulge in because their valuation abroad will suffer and the damages and consequences are far higher. And thirdly, to liaison with the regulatory authorities, the price cap issues, you require an Indian owner to interact with the government, whether it is through FICCI, whether it is to our pathology forums, but you need an Indian promoter to proactively engage with government, whether it is Ayushman Bharat rates, which are not possible to cover your costs also. CGHS rates are better, but the payments come after 2 years. And many hospitals in Delhi didn't get paid for last 2 years. So things like that cannot be handled by multinational because their compliance levels don't allow them to handle these kind of issues. So I think not only some of them will not exist, I see a challenge more for multinational than local Indian companies. And we have Mr. Wazirani with us, and he is one of the few Indian manufacturers who has made a mark in this field dominated by multinationals, whether it is Roche or Abbott or Siemens. Today we are proud to have Transasia amongst one of those. So I think the same thing will happen in pathology chains too.
Right, sir. Thank you so much, Dr. Phadke. Dr. Rajiv Gautam, sir, your closing remarks.
Not much to say after the stalwarts here, but very nicely put it by Dr. Sushil Shah that the era is over of the single labs and the largest labs, and Dr. Ravi Gaur talk about the quality and of course the genetics and the new digital things. My point is that the new things which is everybody is in this room get agreed to that. We are entering into the new area of IVD, which is the digital. This artificial intelligence is coming much faster in this area than everybody we understand it. I think normally we don't understand how fast it is getting into our lives, especially also in the diagnostics. Now we also has getting into the digital morphology now. Everybody is talking about a lab and everything, but how many professionals are there? How many MD pathology is there? How many we don't have in the villages, in the township? So I think we can still have the center of excellence in somewhere in the city, and we can have a digital something, we can get it, a data reporting, something like this. So I think for a country like India, which is professionals are not there, properly there, quality is not there, digital pathology is going to be, I think, is the way in the future for next 10, 20 years. Maybe sometimes you have a topic of this digital morphology or digital pathology. I think this is the new situation for going forward. That's all.
Right, sir.
And once again, thanks for being my privilege to be part of this panel.
Privilege is ours, sir. Dr. Ravi Gaur, sir, your remarks.
I think all has been said. I'll probably put into 3 simple words. I'll talk about QCI. I think it's not Quality Council of India. I'm talking about, say, Q for quality. Quality, whether it's your processes or accreditation or your skill or technology, adopt that. That's very important to be aware of that, number 1. Number C is for, say, collaboration. Collaborate with whatever you feel. Communicate, because whether it's a global compliance or it's a national compliance or a regional compliance or a district-wide compliance, and even person or the clinician, you have to collaborate, communicate, and be a clinical support provider, clinical solution provider. Then only you will be able to be successful in the lab today, because you have to pull up that chain end to end, because that's the way it could work. And I is like invest your time in the lab. Understand the processes. Money investment is also definitely needed about it. Invest your time, invest your money, individualize reports. It's no more like a generalized report. It have to be individualized reports. And for better interpretation. Because if you do all this together, QCI, and I'm sure we have the future, we can co-create the next, and we can probably look forward 10 years from now. But we have to start today.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Gaur. And with that, we conclude the discussion. I think we have a question in the audience. Can we have the mic, please?
Great discussion. I'm Dr. Upendra Srinivas. I'm an MD DM, and I started my own set of diagnostic chains, so-called in Tier 2 and Tier 3 cities in Andhra Pradesh. The 2 key remarks that I actually want to highlight is that I fundamentally disagree with what Dr. Shah was telling, that there's no money in this industry. With an 8 billion pie of Indian diagnostic market share, I don't see any reason why there's no, especially the Tier 2 and Tier 3s are not even explored fully well. And the reason why the things are not happening the way it should is because there's no entry barrier. There are 2 aspects to it. One is regulation and one is accreditation. Accreditation in our country is only voluntary. It has to be made mandatory. That happens only when insurance covers the diagnostics. That is one. And the regulation is that there's no entry barrier. Everybody who has got the money bags can enter into this sector. So these are the 2 things why my question comes is why the top players, who are in the pole position, can influence the policy makers to look into these 2 aspects and make this industry thrive. And the other remark that was made is that a doctor-driven or a pathologist-driven centers in that era is over. I disagree with that. Because I can be a standing example for that. I started very late in my, after having worked in a lot of hospitals, including in Mumbai. The doctor-driven or pathology-driven still has a scope, and I feel that the industry is gradually moving back towards a hyper-local model. If any competent pathologist is there in Tier 2 and Tier 3, because these cannot be penetrated by national level players who have big reference labs at some metros, and they can't penetrate, and the sample integrity has gone nowhere. I mean, nobody is taking care of the sample integrity issues and all that. With these two things, I feel that industry can still be concentrated and get back to a hyper-local model. If we have more and more competent pathologists who want to be entrepreneurial, and as Dr. Shah was telling, that administrative skills are lacking in pathologists. If you can inculcate that curriculum at the college level, where pathologists can be a part managers also, then that would definitely change the horizons of diagnostic practice in India. These are the two remarks, and I would like to have the panel, their opinions on this.
Yeah, coming to the first one, you said about no money being in the industry. I didn't say there is no money in the industry. I said the money which these people have seen, like the international labs they have seen. Let's say, for example, Quest, their turnover is $22 billion. Your whole industry put together in India will not be that much. It will be half, not even half. So they have seen at a very high level of money, and what they are going to get out of here is minuscule. Same thing about pharma companies. When they have their valuation in 50,000, 80,000, 90,000 crores, and here we are talking about 1,000, 2,000 crores. So what I'm saying, they feel that amount of energy and effort which they put into this is not commensurate with what they are doing otherwise.
The reason exactly why these players have miserably failed is because, again, it is coming to hyper-local model, because they don't know the local, how it works, local things work. That's exactly the reason. I mean, pharma should be put an entry barrier into this diagnosis. They have no business to get into diagnostics. Why can't we adopt a South African model is my question. As somebody has rightly said in the board, if 51% is held by a pathologist, things will definitely smoothen out. That's what my suggestion is.
Yeah, but even the pharma companies left. What I'm saying is that they also couldn't sustain here, in spite of that, though they are from the same industry, you know.
Right.
Then the other two things which you mentioned, I forgot, sorry. Which are the other two things which you...
Doctor-driven or pathology-driven is beyond its era now. That's what you commented.
See, I didn't say it's beyond era today. I said in other coming 10 to 15 years, it is going to be very difficult for them to sustain on their own. Within 10, because the whole thing is now gradually shifting. It is not a one-day process. Today it is like tomorrow. It will take a time. It will take years. Today itself, you see what you see the standalone labs which were there 25 years back, and you see today, you don't even see half of them. Many labs have, the number has actually shrunk from that point of view. A lot of them are now technician-driven.
This trend is basically because of lack of proper regulation. Once that comes in...
That is also one of the reasons.
Yeah,
you're right.
Once that comes in, then probably then again...
Correct.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. There's one more question, please.
A very good morning to all. Myself, Dr. Jatin Munjal, hematologist at National Reference Lab, Dr. Lal. So it's an honor to be here in front of all these stalwarts and getting guidance from you all. So I echo all the sentiments and all the points that have been made, especially Dr. Avinash, sir. The TAT is a huge issue when the hub and spoke model comes into play of scalability. Along with that, I would like to add that the pre-analytical issues as well, the sample viability and stability is also a huge thing as far as hematology, coagulation, factor assays and flow cytometry is concerned. So that also is a hindrance in that kind of model along with TAT. Also, I would like to add that there isn't sufficient training at the level of medical colleges when this scalability thing, automation, scalability, LIS, middleware, all these terms come into play. For scalability, it's an important thing to consider that product and consumer kind of model, where report becomes a product and the patient becomes a consumer. So as doctors or students of medicine, we are not taught those things. So I think at the level of medical colleges as well, there should be effort to inculcate these kind of administrative skills. Recently, I have been to Horiba's technical facility at Nagpur, and they have this beautiful campus. Dr. Rajiv Gautam, we had telecommunication that time as well. So they have this institute, and they have a wonderful training program where we taught, we had these workshops for budding pathologists from all over Maharashtra and Gujarat. So we had workshops which included the curriculum of routine hematology, the basics of hematology, along with the automation, scalability, and middleware, remote access. So I think there needs to be more such trainings for budding pathologists as well. Thank you.
Right. I think for any further questions, we can take it down the forum, because this marks the conclusion of this discussion, and I don't think there could be any better start than this leadership talk. So thank you so much to the speakers. It was an honor for me to be interacting with you.
Thank you, panelists, for that enlightening discussion. I would request you all to please stay on stage for the felicitation. Now, I would like to invite Dr. Naveen Nishchal on the stage to felicitate the panelists. Can we have a huge round of applause, please?